Hi, in this video we'll be going over the continuation of the C# tutorials. So in this video we'll be doing nested decision structures. So to test more than one condition, a decision structure can be nested inside another decision structure. So basically you can nest them. So you can have like an if or an else. What's happened with that? My hand was on the keyboard. My bad. Okay, so basically you can have an if or else statement within an if or else statement, and then within the first statement you can have within the inner statement you can have another statement inside of that one, and so on. You can basically just nest them forever. You want to try to limit your nesting as much as possible though, because it can get confusing if you start nesting them too much. Like you could get nests way out here. Well, you won't really notice that here, but I guess kind of if you're indenting them properly. You get nests out there, way out there. You don't want to be nested like way out there, right? That can cause a lot of confusion. So try to limit your nesting to the least as possible. You want to limit your use of fields, sorry, let me start that again. So you want to limit your fields, global variables, and nesting. You want to keep them to a minimum. Always use private variables if you can. Try not to use public. Use protected if anything. Okay, so then now we'll just talk about pretty much just do an example. It's pretty self-explanatory. We just have an if-else in another if-else in another one in another one in another one. That's a nest. Technically one nest is just one if-else in another if-else, or an if within an if. It doesn't have to be if-else. So let me just try to teach this off the top of my head. Okay, so let's just say we have some kind of, I want to do it in the class here. So let's just say void, public void. Okay, so this is a class, it's going to be down here. Okay, so public void, actually let's go public string get string. So here let's say, okay, well, string str1 points to str. Let's just go with something actually. Let's just go with blueberries or something. Okay, so if okay, actually maybe this won't work that well. Let's just go with some numbers here just to keep this simple. Or else we'll be getting into string methods. I don't think we've gone over all of them yet. So let's just go with let me make this private. Private string str1 points, no, not string. Private int val1 points to 5. Okay, so let's say if val, not that. Okay, so if, why is it doing that? Why is it doing this? I don't think it likes the private. That could be the problem here. Okay, I think that's what I thought. That's what I was saying last time. It didn't like me having using the private access modifier there. Okay. Someone's like, yeah, you're not supposed to do that. I already knew that. Well, I know, I just forgot. So let's just go. Let's go with. Let's just say if. It's interesting that the C# compiler doesn't actually tell you what the problem is. It just kind of starts doing random keywords when you try to do that. Unless that was just Rider. I don't think Rider would do that. but it's possible. So one or the other, something happened there. It doesn't actually tell you the error sometimes. So let's just say if val is equal to 5, then we'll say okay, well then, oops, sorry, val1 is equal to 5. It also spaces my ifs out. Okay, so we'll say okay. So we'll have then we'll set val1 points to 6. Then we'll just let's just say this is an example here. If val1 points to 6, then we want to say okay, well val1 points to 4. This is kind of a nest, as you can see. We're just going in. So if val1 points to 4, val1 points to 0. So you could have this, right? Something like that. If you could have an else here. So you could say, okay, well if val1 points to 5, then I want to step into the nest. Otherwise I want to get out of the nest. Then we just said, okay, well val1 points to 0. Oh, whoops, I should probably have done that in an else clause. You don't always need to use an else clause, but in this case we can. See here, that starts to branch out a lot. Imagine having like tons of them. It can get confusing. So there'll be, so this you have to look at. You have to use the square brackets to see which else or which if that the else matches. So it's always the closest one to the else, or the closest if to the else or else to the if. So in this case, this else is closest to this ifs bracket, bottom ending or closing square bracket. So in that case, this else goes with this if. Where do we add this else clause? Does anyone know? Would be added here, over here, maybe over here. It can be tricky at first. So the answer is you put that here. So below, so you go, okay, this is my if, this is a condition, this is the opening bracket. Then I want to go to the closing bracket. It highlights them for you in advanced IDEs. Even some old school ones, it might highlight them for you. The MetaTrader MT5 IDE, maybe the 4. I don't use 4. There's no point of using 4. The testing's bad. But even that one IDE for MetaTrader 5 the MQL5 IDE, which is a framework of C++. It is kind of old school, but it has a highlighting feature as well. One of the only features that it has. Otherwise, basically this. So let's just get back to the code. So basically, this if so the else clause to this matching if block will be right underneath its closing bracket. In this case, we could just say, okay, well then we want to set val1 point to 0. I would probably just leave them like that. That can start to get a little confusing here, right? But this is pretty much the building blocks of code. This is how you get around things. You use these conditional statements. This is in every language. There's some kind of conditional statement, which is usually an if or else, or some kind of loop in every language. You can also use a go-to statement, which isn't advised. You can kind of jump around with that, which can make reading the code difficult, but we'll talk about that later. If C# does have a go-to, I'm pretty sure C does. It might. I wouldn't recommend using a go-to. They don't advise it in the docs. But pretty much, we'll just stick with conditionals for now. So where does the matching else clause to this if statement go? it goes right here. Whoops. Just joking. It won't even let me do that for some reason. It just starts typing some random stuff. Just so remember that it always goes at the end of the closing bracket. So else. So it goes to the end of the closing if bracket. So here we just go val 1. Well, we're setting val 1 to point to 0, but it just goes at the end. Notice how there's no condition here, like else. If we can have, you can do this, but you shouldn't do that. In this case, you shouldn't. But we wouldn't check else. Val 1 points to like 10, then we do this. We don't do that because the way that it works is it's either true or it's false. So if it's false, you don't need a condition for the false. So this if statement here is going to be true or false, right? So then in this case, this statement is if this statement's true, this if block gets executed, the rest of the conditionals get skipped. In this case, this else gets skipped, which could be linked to much more nests, right? We could have another if in here, which could nest it even more. If val 1 points to 100, then set val 1 to point to 200, else val 1 points to 0. And this statement always gets hit too, if you get in here. But see how that can get confusing? Like, that's a lot of nesting. Like as I said, you can get nesting way out there, which is what you don't want, because that can just be really confusing if you have, well, what if this was that or this was this, but then in this case you ended up with that. When you're trying to figure it out, it can get confusing. That's why you have the debugger, the use of the tool, the debugger tool, to help you keep track of your variables. But in any case, you don't want to do that. You want to keep it as simple as possible. But as you can see, you can do this if you really need to. So basically this starts here, and if this wasn't true, we wouldn't have gotten here. So if this was false, again, this whole block would have been skipped to this highlighted. Let me try to zoom in enough so you guys can see the whole thing. Sorry, zoom out. Okay, so if you guys can see that, it's pretty small, but this is our initial condition in our method, public string get str. Well, let's just go with get val. And it's not even a string, so let's just go with public void val. So we didn't return anything by saying void. We're just calling it val just because we wanted to name it for some reason. So what's happening here is that if this statement wasn't true, if the statement was, if val did not equal to 5 or not point to 5, from this block to this block, all that would have been skipped, just because val 1 did not equal 5 or point to 5. In that case, this else clause at the bottom would have got hit. Right? Something like that. So hopefully that makes sense. That's just me teaching, not even from the book, but that's just, hopefully that makes sense. But basically, yeah, so if this was true, then we, of course, if it's true, then you jump into the closest bracket, opening bracket, square bracket, then we say, okay, well now val 1 points to 6, and we check, okay, if val 1 points to 6, and we step into this block, then we say, okay, val 1 points to 4, if val 1 points to 4, then we step in, val 1 points to 0. But then we say, okay, if val 1 did not point to 4, then we say else, and we get into this block, then we check another if. If val 1 points to 100, then val 1 points to 200, else val 1 points to 0. And then in this case, otherwise, I mean, in any case, in this case, if you're here, at least, in this block will always get hit. So it can be confusing, and it's well, you will get tested on this 100% if you're learning code in university or high school or whatever. What is this? Sorry. Something popped up on my screen. Okay, so yeah, so that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys understand. So let's continue on to the actual docs, about what the docs are teaching from the Canadian curriculum. What the Canadian curriculum is teaching university students. Let's go over that. That's just my teaching, so let's just continue on with the docs let's continue with the Canadian docs here. So there's a UML diagram, which basically I just explained it in my own theory, but that's exactly what it's explaining. Mine was a bit more in depth. So quite often structures must be nested inside other structures, so we talked about that. So a sequence structure nested inside another decision structure, so we talked about that. So nested decision structures, which are decision structures that appear inside other decision structures. So sorry, I always get tongue twisted on decision. Don't make fun of me. Alright, so let's just continue on. I think we have an example code here. So we'll probably be jumping into the lab, I guess now, because there's not much more information, unless you want to talk about raincoats and not whether it's raining or not, which isn't that fun. Alright, so let me just get this lab set up here. Let's just talk about that. Alright, so I'm gonna be switching over to the designer now. Let's get the toolbox out. Where is the toolbox? Okay, there. So systems.windows.forms. Excuse me. Okay, so this is going to be a lone qualifying app example where we're going to practice the nested decision structures. Okay, so we're going to have to create a GUI kind of form thing. Same as usual, we'll probably skip the panel. Well, we can throw in a panel, it doesn't really matter. We could maybe throw in a panel and a group, why not? So let's start with that. Group box, so let's just put one here. Whoops. Okay. Don't really need that to be any bigger than that, but that's fine. Okay, so about that big, I think. And we'll just have one panel for the, actually maybe a little bit bigger than that. Something like that. Group box, that's a group box. Let's just call this, don't really need to name it, we could. Don't really have a good name for it right now, so let's just go with a panel here as well. Just something like that is fine for the purpose of demonstration or learning. Okay, so we have that. We just need two text boxes. Okay, maybe I should have done, no, we need 2 text boxes, 1, 2, 3 labels, and 3 buttons. Okay, so let's do that. So we'll start off with the text boxes first. We'll put 1 here. Alright, so let's I can't make that any bigger for some reason. I'm not sure why. Usually does let me resize them. Okay, that's fine. So let's just click that, get the right tab up. It's that second one there. It's hard to see. Okay, so this will change to salary text box. Okay, so salary text box, and we'll change auto, because there's no auto size I think for text boxes. Font size we'll go with like 36 or something like that. That's about good. Let's try to make that a bit bigger, a bit longer, or actually no, wider I guess in that case. Something like that. Okay, so let's just copy that, Control C, paste, Control V. We'll just put that underneath like that. And then we'll get 1, 2, how many we need? I guess we need 4 in this case. We could have used a group here, another group here. We could do a group and a group, but that might be too much. Okay, that could be too much. So let's just go with the label here. So then we'll go with 1. Okay, let's start with the top. 1 here. So then we'll just name this one. The identifier will actually, sorry, we don't really need an identifier for this. Let's just go with auto size. How many down is auto size? So I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't see it from where I am. The text is so small. Okay, so we have... I can see these fine, but for some reason I can't really see these that great. So let's change the size of this again to 36 or something. And okay, so that's fine now. So we'll go with text here. Change the text property to annual salary. So we'll copy that and then paste it here. This text property will change it to years at current job, or just years on job, whatever you want. Okay, so then we have another label here. I think that's all we need there. Okay, whoops, let's go with Control Z on that. So we'll just take this, Control C, Control Z that one. What else do we need? This should all fit fine here. going to be another label here. So, sorry, so this should be loan decision or something, so loan decision. Bad credit, get a loan. No, I'm just kidding. Pretty much, you can actually. Your rate will probably be pretty high. There's a lot of car dealerships out there that'll actually, they're like scam. I don't know how they do it, but they got scam dealerships where they get you into a really bad loan, but you'll have, if you have really bad credit, it'll be like a ridiculous markup on the car or whatever, vehicle, truck, bike, or anything. It'll probably be like 25 to 30% or even more on what it's really worth or what you should really be paying. And they do that by getting you a massive interest rate. But sometimes you need that, I guess. Alright, so we have so loan decision here will have pretty much just another label underneath. These don't need identifiers. 1, 2, 3 don't need identifiers because we're not going to be calling them in the event handlers. But the one underneath here, which we'll just copy here, copy that, paste it, that will need to be. So we'll change the identifier for that one to decision label. Whoops. Oh, great. Okay, decision label, text, we'll just make that a big long space. Or even more than that, I guess. Too much. Something. Just trying to guess here. Alright, that's fine. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. We could have just actually fit that properly. It's fine. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so then now we have lots of extra room here. But that's fine. So what happens if I make this box smaller? It's fine, actually. So we could just leave it like that. Okay, let's put a border style on that. So we can, at least you guys can see that on my high contrast. Why am I always in high contrast? Someone probably asked. Well, because it hurts your eyes if you stare at it for a long time. I actually usually wear sunglasses. That'll help you reduce the strain a lot too. But if you're coding or something all day, you're going to want to reduce, because you can get bad headaches from like right above your eyes from staring at bright screens for too long. That's why you'll probably want to throw on the shades. One day you'll understand if you don't understand now. But if you get into like serious coding, you'll want to throw on the shades eventually and turn the brightness to like the most high contrast night mode you can find, because it'll reduce the strain. Even this could be, we could change these text colors to something else, like blue or red or anything, or something else to reduce the strain. That's okay. Alright, so then now let's pretty much just do the last 3 buttons. So we'll have 3 buttons here. We just really need to design one of them and change the identifier for the rest of them. So we'll paste a button down here. Okay, so let's go with Let's go with pretty much the same thing. We'll just change this to check button. We'll go with auto size. I think it's this one here. Exactly 8 down. Okay, so then we have, whoops, we'll go with button size to something bigger. Then we'll go with the text to check. That's a big button. Okay, so let's go with text size to be smaller than that. That size didn't change, okay. That's fine, so let's just go with that. So that button's fine, so we'll go with, that should be all fine, so we'll go with Control C. So we'll hit Control C on my keyboard and then Control V. We'll change this identifier to clear button. We'll change the text to clear. We could throw in those hotkeys or whatever access keys, but we'll skip that. We've already done that. When we learn how to code them, we'll be adding that in. Probably every time, just to practice. Okay, so then after that, we'll just copy that. Paste. So here we'll go with, we'll change the identifier to exit button. Okay, so we have our exit button, and then we have exit button. What else do we need here? Just be the text to just exit, I guess. That really should be everything. Maybe we could make that text box just a bit bigger. Perfect. Alright, so we have our form that doesn't look too bad. We didn't change this group name. We didn't change the form name. We know how to do that already. But to really do that, we could just click the form name to check loan or something. Whoops, no, that's the identifier. I'll just change that back to group box 1 here. I'll change the text property down here to check loan or something. Form 1 text property we can change to just like loan. Whatever you want. So that should be fine. So that should be everything. So now let's move on to the actual code part. Check button. I'll double click that one. Okay, so let's just see what we have here for the code. Alright, so just a bit to do here, nothing crazy. Probably take about 15 minutes or something. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, so we have let's go with this check button. So private void check button underscore click. Takes two parameters, object sender, comma, event args e. or event args, whatever you want. Event args event, or event args in lowercase. Alright, so let's start with a try block here. Let's make the text a bit bigger. I feel like having some pie today. There's no pie. Alright, so let's have pie and ice cream. Sounds pretty good right now. Alright, so let's go with constant. So try, and then try, open a try block, and then inside the try block we'll have a constant decimal. Minimum salary. I spelled it wrong. Minimum underscore salary points to some minimum whatever salary. So here we'll have another constant int minimum underscore years underscore on underscore job points to whatever, anything. Sorry, let me just check something out here. Radio stop, okay. So we have our two local constants. Well, they're called named constants. Pretty much they're local constants. I'm not sure why they call them named constants. So they're local constants. Then we have local variables, which are going to be decimal salary and int years on job. Those are just going to be declared with no initial value. So we can just have that here. Decimal salary. Int will have int years on job. So here we'll get the salary and years on job. So here we'll say salary points to decimal dot parse salary text box dot text. Pretty much just the same old code so far that we've done. So now we're saying, okay, years on job points to int dot parse years text box dot text. What happened there? Did I forget to name something? Okay, so let's go back to our designer. Sorry about that. So years on job we have, yep, I think I forgot to name this one. Let me just go back up here to my picture of the GUI. So we have years text box. Did I not name that? Years salary text box. Yeah, I didn't name that one, sorry. So let's go with, whoops, what happened there? Okay, so let's change the identifier of this one right there. So I'll click it to get the bounding box up, then I'll double click the name property to change the name, the identifier. So here we'll just change that to years text box. We'll hit enter. There we go, so that just changed from red to purple. Pink, purpley pink. So now let's just go back to the next line here. So we'll have a nested if else clause. So we'll have an if here, if salary is greater than or equal to minimum salary. Then we'll nest another if inside, so if years on job is greater than or equal to minimum years on job. I think I spelled something wrong here. That should have a B on it. Okay, so then in this case the user qualifies. So we're going to open those we're going to open that block. So if years on job is greater than or equal to minimum years on job, then we'll have a decision label dot text points to a string that says you qualify for the loan. Sorry, let me just have some water here. My stomach's kind of getting upset. Alright, sorry about that. So let's just continue on. Okay, so we have decision label dot text points to you qualify for the loan. That should be fine just in the string like that. And underneath underneath this if block, then we'll have our else block. So else, I wanted to type the brackets myself. So we'll say, okay, well, decision, excuse me, so decision label dot text points to minimum years at current plus, so let's end that literal there, plus, why does it do that? Okay, so they're trying to explain the kind of string to the next line, so job not met. Does that work? Or, yeah, that should be fine. So you can do that, you can use a plus to kind of join it to the next line. I didn't think you really needed to use a plus, but I guess you can. We're just going to concatenate it. So this is our else block. So this else matches this if. Now we have this if out here, we're going to create an else block for that one. So we're going to go under, so to create an else block for this if statement, remember what I said earlier, you have to go underneath its closing brace or square bracket, whatever, underneath, else, open some more brackets. Why did it do that automatically? Okay, so we have, in this case the user does not qualify, so we'll say, okay, well, decision label dot text points to minimum salary requirement. So decision label.text points to the string minimum salary. I spelled requirement wrong. Requirement with the double line string again, not met. So then now we'll have a catch block beneath the else. Actually, sorry, I lied. Beneath the try. So underneath the try, you put the catch block. Not here. It's not underneath there, underneath here. So we'll say catch exception, so EX capital, because it's the class exception, exception with lowercase. You could have called it E or whatever, EX. Java, they usually do E or EX. Actually, I don't think you can do E because you have E already here. Java also does. Java does it like this, so I'd rather just call it exception. Just my choice. C# goes for EX, I think. It's up to you. Like those you can name whatever you want, so you could just pick them. It's coder defined, you can pick those. Whatever you want to call it. Then here we'll just say we want to display an error message, so we'll say message box dot show exception dot message. Easy, right? So that we just have to call a message box, a dialog box dot show exception dot. So we're calling the exception object, and then its method, its message method. So hopefully that makes sense. That should be almost everything. So we'll just clear, set everything. So to do that, we need to double click the clear button to generate the event handler for now until we learn how to code that later on. We can move that up. We could comment this out. So once we comment that out, we can just say salary text box dot text points to empty quotes. Then here we'll say here's text box dot text points to an empty string. Decision label dot text property points to an empty string, semicolon. We'll reset the focus, salary text box dot focus, which will set the focus back to the salary text box once this line executes. And we'll click the designer, double click the exit button. So then here we'll say this dot close, and this dot close is going to call it, so this calls the form. We're calling the dot close method, which will close the form, which will pretty much be an exit. And that's it. So we'll just save all and run it. Once again, I'll try to download the OBS Studio so you guys can see my basically, like right now, instead of me trying to compile it, which is extra work on my part anyway. So I'm just let me just make a note of that somewhere right now, actually, before I continue on to try to download OBS Studio again. Okay, obsproject.com, I have that open, so I don't forget. Okay, so let's just try something here. Let me just test this. Perfect. It works. Alright, so in 2 seconds I'll show you guys the actual GUI. So I'll see you guys in a sec. Thanks.